Hi, Gene here with today's thought. Today's thought could be longer than my usual thoughts. In fact, it probably will be, and you may see one or two or more jump cuts, because if I get 8 or 9 minutes into a vlog and I trip over my own tongue, I'm not going to go all the way back and start again. So you may see some jump cuts here. And also, I'm doing something that I rarely do, which is to reply directly to a commenter. Now, my policy on replying to comments, and the reason it's so rare, is because I have this vlog to say whatever I want for as long as I want. So I try very hard just to leave the comments section for the commenters. For all of you, I rarely step in, maybe with one word or two, but I rarely step in because I want to keep the two separate. I want that to be your space. But every once in a blue moon, I will reply to a commenter if a commenter raises an interesting point. Usually the commenter, when it's happened, doesn't even realize the point that the commenter is raising. But a comment about a specific vlog actually has implications for a wider issue or for some other important event of the day, and then I'll step in and comment. And this is one of those days. So first of all, the vlog that the commenter is commenting is this one. I should probably link to it so you can go look at it directly. But it was called "Our Decrepit and Embarrassing President, The View from Overseas." That pretty much sums it up anyhow, if you don't want to go and listen to it. But it was, the bulk of it was Sky News, a Sky News commentator. That's an Australian station. It's kind of the equivalent of Fox News, Australia, Europe. So also, I think they broadcast outside the United States. The commenter was showing Biden a bunch of his gaffes, falls, whatever, and pretty much mocking the president. And I said, well, this is the president. This is our leader of the free world. This is what they're seeing. So that's what that, and the implication, obviously, being that I don't think Biden should be president, which, if you've been watching this vlog for a while, you already know. Anyways, I'm going to put up a comment now. I got a comment from somebody who calls himself Johnny Freedom, and well, here's a comment. I'll put it up and I'll read it to you. "You probably wouldn't have voted for a president in a wheelchair, would you? Yet he turned out to be one of the best presidents America ever had. So much for your judgment." First of all, he doesn't name the president, but obviously it's FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, who was struck with polio early in his life and was in a wheelchair for most of his life. So that's to whom Johnny Freedom is referring. But there's a wider point here, and a couple points. First, I just want to make a couple points about liberal commenters, because this person is obviously a liberal, a very far left liberal, and the reason you know is because of this last sentence: "So much for your judgment." In other words, you could have just said, "You probably wouldn't have voted for a president in a wheelchair, would you? Yet he turned out to be one of our best presidents America ever had," and stop there. But liberal Democrats, they don't work that way, and it's very sad. So they have to add the ad hominem attack, or the attack on the person with whom they're disagreeing. And you saw it if you watched I have a home office, so I was able to, and that's why you didn't have a vlog the day before, because I work in my home office, and I'll usually take a few minutes to make a vlog like this one out of the day, and then edit it later maybe. But I watch the first impeachment inquiry hearing. So I kept it on my screen as I was working, and kind of, watch it out of the corner of my eye for the entire hearing. And the Democrats did that over and over. The Republicans were presenting all these evidence and this witness testimony of basically laying the groundwork to do what they just did, which is to subpoena the personal bank records of Hunter Biden and James Biden. You can be sure they're going to get to Joe Biden sooner or later. But all this evidence, this could be a separate vlog. I don't want to take time now, but emails, phone calls, witnesses such as Devin Archer, Tony Bobolinsky, yada yada yada, on, and all the Democrats would do. They turn to their either Trump or what I call the widows and orphans defense. So you saw, I lost count of how many times Trump was mentioned. So they would go Trump, 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 which this is all about Biden, but they would go Trump, 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 or they would say, the widow, we should be working on avoiding a government shutdown, which they could avoid easily just by voting for the Republican plan. But they go on, and all the people who starve won't get paychecks, whatever. One representative, I don't remember her name, she actually went through a whole list, all the Republican committee members. So she went through a list of all of them, saying, Representative Joe Blow in his district, 100,000 people won't get a paycheck or something like that. Another woman, just representative, just Democrat, just screamed and screamed for 5 minutes. They each had 5 minutes to make statements, ask questions. She used her whole 5 minutes just to scream and this idea that apparently they never watch C-SPAN. You can go on C-SPAN any day and you can see that there are multiple committees meeting in the House and the Senate every single day. So the idea that that this one committee is distracting the House from voting, passing a budget, the appropriations bills, or in this case, a CR, continuing resolution, that it's just ridiculous. So, but I'm getting kind of off the track, so I'll get back on the track. So that's the one comment. But the about Johnny Freedom, and I'm not being I'm not attacking you. I'm just saying this is because I would never do that. That's the whole point. But so much for your judgment. You'll never read or hear something like that from me. Okay. So that's point one. Point two, and this is a bigger one before we get to the bigger issue, which is the way liberal commenters such as Johnny Freedom undercut their own arguments because they don't do research or see. They just as these Democratic representatives did the day before. I'm recording this. It was on Thursday. The way they just repeat talking points and they don't link anything to anything. For instance, they keep talking about, no evidence for impeachment, and there's and the Republicans had to make clear over and over it's an impeachment inquiry. It's not an impeachment, and it's to determine whether there are grounds to go forward with an impeachment. In other words, gathering evidence. You don't have to have the evidence before you have the hearing. What you need is a credible allegation, which there are. Again, I don't want to go into detail again. That was one. Number two was saying, nothing, again, no evidence, say no evidence linking Joe Biden directly to a payment. And at least one of the witnesses, Jonathan Turley, professor of law, you've probably seen him on TV, said you don't need that. Court cases have already settled that issue. If the family benefits, it's considered a benefit to. If Joe Biden's family benefits for some corrupt act that he did, bribery, then it's the same as the law makes no distinction between that and a benefit to Joe Biden. So the reason I gave you that long prelude is because Johnny Freedom uses FDR to make this point. And by the way, the answer in the title I will answer in a moment, but FDR, Franklin Roosevelt, and I'm going to use FDR because that's how he was referred to instead of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But that is, FDR is the absolute worst example that you could have picked, Mr. Freedom. Actually, you're making the exact opposite point, as you're going to see in a moment. But first, the question that he's asking here, you probably wouldn't have voted for a president in a wheelchair, would you? Well, that question, if you're talking about FDR, if you're going into the past, that question depends, and what it depends on is what point in my life, because I started out as a Democrat, became a Republican, now I'm just a conservative independent. So yes, when I was a Democrat, if I were in FDR's time, at the point in my life where I were a Democrat, then I could have voted for FDR. Ronald Reagan voted for FDR all 4 times. FDR, of course, was elected, only president to be elected to 4 terms. So if Ronald Reagan voted for him, then very well, I very well may have. Reagan obviously later became a Republican because, as he famously said, I did not leave the Democratic Party. The Democrat Party left me, and that is the important distinction to make. So that's because that was my situation. The Democratic Party left me, and that's why I'm no longer a Democrat. So if you're talking about if I was hopped in a time machine today when I'm a conservative, I would have voted probably against FDR. But you also have to keep in mind that the disability part, when you vote for somebody in a wheelchair, well, there's a governor in a wheelchair right now. It's the governor of Texas is Greg Abbott. He is in a wheelchair. I live in Tennessee, but if I were in a Texas resident, I would have voted for him. His disability would make no difference. What matters, though, is, and same thing with Roosevelt maybe, because his disability was from polio that he suffered early in life. In Greg Abbott's case, a tree fell on him, I believe, and he was paralyzed, but otherwise healthy. Otherwise, it wasn't coupled with other problems that would prevent him from being president. Now, getting to Roosevelt, this is why FDR is the worst example that Mr. Freedom could have picked. And I'm linking to a Wikipedia article on the Roosevelt Memorial. There is a memorial to Franklin Roosevelt, FDR, in Washington, D.C. And I remember at the time, because I was around, obviously, and there was a big controversy at that time. So I'm just going to read from the article, and I link to it. You can read the whole thing if you're interested in the memorial. But the statue of Frank, because they put a statue up, obviously, if it's a memorial, there's going to be a statue. So the statue of Franklin Delano Roosevelt stirred controversy over the issue of his disability. Designers decided against plans to have FDR shown in a wheelchair. Instead, the statue depicts the president. This is the important part. The statue depicts the president in a chair with a cloak obscuring the chair, showing him as he appeared to the public during his life. And I checked this. I went on to Google Images, and I just pulled up image after image. I didn't spend the whole day, obviously, but image after image after image of Franklin Roosevelt, especially focusing on the time when he was president, so 1933 to 1945. And I found only one, and I'm putting it up right now. This is the only picture I could find of Roosevelt in a wheelchair, and you can see it's a private photo taken at home, and at home. Any other photo, they don't show him in a wheelchair. Now here he is at his inauguration. Here's his first inauguration, 1933, and he's standing up, or he's at standing height. He is not made to look as if he's in a wheelchair, and that's why FDR is such a bad example. Because the implication is that I'm some bigot who would not vote for a guy in a wheelchair, but the people in 1933, or the people who voted for Roosevelt all four times, would, because they're enlightened Democrats or something. No. They didn't know he was in a wheelchair because he was never photographed in a wheelchair. And this is the other point that relates to Biden today. The press cooperated because obviously he doesn't, pop out of thin air, not in a wheelchair, a cloak or something. They knew, the press knew, but they never photographed him with, unless you want to look and maybe find a rare photo. There might be a photo, I think, of him in a room with a wheelchair, but him not in it. But if FDR in a wheelchair, you're going to look very hard to find a photo of FDR in a wheelchair. And that is why he is such a bad example. And the question is, why was he never photographed in a wheelchair? And it's obviously because FDR himself and the people around him believed, rightly or wrongly, they believed that it would hurt his prospects for being elected or reelected, as the case may be. And so they took great pains to hide his disability. Now, and so I just read you that quote. So the controversy now, several decades later, when they made the memorial, they were debating again whether to show him in a wheelchair, whether to say don't hide the fact that he was disabled, and they hid the fact that he was disabled. They showed him sitting down with a cloak over his lap, and they don't show a wheelchair. So there you go. That's why it's a bad example. But now there's the wider point that because Mr. Freedom brought up Roosevelt, there's a wider point here that has to be made that goes directly to Joe Biden, and it's whether there is, well, you have to make the distinction when Joe Biden falls over, he can barely walk, he trips down steps. That's not because of some childhood disease that otherwise leaves him functional. He's obviously having other problems. It's part of other problems, and that's what I'm going to get to in a moment. But my question to Mr. Freedom would be, well, if it's not a problem, then why, never mind a wheelchair, never mind even a walker, why do we not see Joe Biden just with a cane to help him walk? He obviously has problems because of the optics, as it was with Roosevelt. Even Democrats, they're taking great, I read an article the other day, they're taking great pains to, such as using the smaller steps at the back of Air Force One, to make sure that he's never, at least until the election, after the election, that he's never doesn't fall, that he can never be photographed falling. So they take great pains, and they want him to wear sneakers, yada yada yada. So that's because most if they have that concern, then, and that's a sign of bigotry, then most Americans are bigots, because that's what their concern is, that most Americans won't vote for him if they see him being disabled. So now here is the wider issue that Mr. Freedom touched on, that inadvertently, but it's a big issue, and it relates directly to today, and it's a practice in general of presidents, of past presidents. And well, here we go. Here's I'll put it up again. Here is the inauguration photo that you just saw of Franklin Roosevelt. Here's another photo. This is just I think a few days after he took office, which would have been March 1933, because in those days, before we amended the Constitution, the president began office on March 4th, took the oath on March 4th. So there's a few days later, and it's the first of his famous fireside chats, which I don't know what they teach people these days, students. So if you don't know what a fireside chat was, he would just go on the radio, and he would just, because so many people were suffering from the Great Depression, and he would, have a little fireside chat and talk to them and give encouragement. But you see what he looks like. See, he looks like a, fairly healthy, well-filled out guy. But look at this photo. This is a later photo, his last address to Congress. And look at him. look at him. He's obviously on his last legs, and he's certainly not the hale and hearty person that you saw in that first photo. This is only 12 years later. But to really give you context, I mean, he looks like he's in his 70s or 80s or something. He's 63 in that photo, 63. And just by way of comparison, I'm pretty healthy. I'm 71, okay? He's 63, and that's what he looks like. But when he died, this is the amazing statistic that I want to give you. When he died, his blood pressure was 325 over 195, something like that. It was very, very high. I'll correct it, if I'm wrong. It could be 350, 325. Very, very high. And the point is, the people around him had to have known how ill he was, but they put him up for a fourth term anyway. This is something that Democrats do, which is unfortunate, which is they hide. Bill Clinton had, well, we all know now that he had quadruple or quintuple, I forget which, at least a quadruple heart bypass after he left office. But during office, obviously, he had heart problems, and he was rumored to have had heart problems. I would say, yeah, obviously, because you don't get the conditions that require a multiple heart bypass operation. They don't just happen overnight. But all during his presidency, he refused to release his medical records, which presidents have traditionally done. But he didn't. And same thing with Joe Biden today. He's not releasing his medical records, and he really needs. It's obvious when you see him. It just as that photo of Roosevelt. That's got nothing to do with being disabled. Biden's mobility problems are a symptom of something much deeper, both physical and mental. He should take the Montreal cognitive assessment test that Donald Trump took, because you listen to, whether you agree with him or not, Trump can speak extemporaneously for hours. He is mentally sharp. I was going to say mentally alert, but he's mentally sharp, whether you agree with him or not. And he's in good health. And Biden not so much. And Biden really needs, but yet they said, Trump, he's mentally ill or something, or he has mental problems, he needs to take a test. He took a test, and he aced it. Remember, he got 100%. He aced the test, and his doctor released the results. Biden won't even take the test, and that's the bigger issue that I wanted to address today. You're seeing it right now. Biden should not be running for president just on his physical and mental condition, whether you agree with him or not. There are other Democrats out there, but the Democrats feel that he has, however good his chances are, they feel he has the best chance, and they could be I don't know how bad his condition could deteriorate when to the point where they would somehow force him to resign. But they won't, and I don't know how you can force him to resign if Biden wants to run. And you have probably till the end of November at the latest, when it's going to be too late to nominate somebody else and get them on a ballot in 50 states. So that's where we are. That's our thought. It's unfortunate, but that's where we are, and that's my thought for today. Thanks for stopping by. If you could subscribe, that would be really great. Share this video with anyone you think would benefit from it. And as always, your comments are welcome, whether you agree with me or not. And I usually don't reply, but if you raise a bigger issue, then I may step in, but I'll do it here on this vlog and try not to do it in the comments. Okay, so that's it. Thanks for stopping by, as I said. And I would love to see all of you again. And until I do see all of you again, bye.